September turned out to be the best month in almost 3 years for India's job market, shows data from CMIE. Total number of people employed shot up, and there was an addition of approximately 70 lakh jobs last month. For a deeper read on the data, joining us here on the show is Managing Director and CEO of CMIE, Mahesh Vyas. Mr. Vyas, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. Appreciate your presence here on the show. Let me first ask you for your key takeaways on the data. On various metrics within the job market, there seems to have been improvement in the month of September.
The first and most important metric is that the unemployment rate has come down. So that's very good. The unemployment rate has been rising steadily for a long time now. And last month, in the month of August, it was very high at 8.2%. And the drop in September is really very welcome, given that this unemployment rate is rising very sharply for several months now. Equally important, or I may even say more important than that, is an increase in the labor force participation rate. This is a number which I think should be tracked as closely as the unemployment rate. It is an indication of how many of the working age population, how many people of this age population is willing to work. They could either be employed or they could be looking for jobs. So this number also went up. It went up a little bit because this is a proportion of the population. Even a small increase in this means a lot of people are joining the labor force. So we saw an increase in the labor force participation rate also in September, and I think that's a very healthy sign. A large number of the people who came to the labor markets looking for jobs actually did get jobs. Very small accretion to the total number of unemployed people. So September was a very good, remarkable month in terms of labor markets. The employment ratio, which is the proportion of all working age population that is actually employed, even that went up. So I think September was a very good month. So let's see how it moves further ahead.
Mr. Vyas, a couple of follow-up questions. One, you go on to say that a bulk of, the improvement has come in from the rural areas, and urban has seen some improvement, though perhaps not as significant as rural.
You're right. Almost the entire improvement is in rural India. And that, one can say, is a bit of a concern because this could be largely a seasonal impact. Rains were late and therefore sowing was late. A large labor force could have been required for these sowing activities all bunched in September, and that could be the explanation why the labor force participation rate went up and employment went up. If this is mostly the case, and it's quite likely that is the case, then as the sowing activities come to an end, these employment opportunities may go away. So qualitatively, the improvement in September is a lot short of what we would like to see. Nevertheless, there was an increase in employment, largely in the rural segments. Urban India did not see any significant increase in employment. There is a statistical increase, but that's not really significant statistically.
Mr. Vyas, within rural India, it would be fair to assume that most of this is agriculture. I ask in the reference of, rural construction, etc. There was a period during elections just before and after. There was some slowdown in some of the rural construction activity, which is also a large employer. Then there was subsequent expectation that post the election uncertainty, that will pick up again. Is there any way of sensing whether it's agriculture employment versus non-agricultural rural employment?
There is good reason to believe that this is largely agricultural employment. There is no basis to place estimate on non-agricultural rural employment. It could be possible. I'm not ruling it out. All I'm saying is that there is parallel evidence to say that the employment increase could be largely agricultural, because in the month of September, one saw a very high increase, an unusually large increase in the additional area under the Kharif crop. So usually in September one sees about 3 million hectares of additional sowing taking place, whereas in September 19 we saw over 5 million hectares coming under the crop. So when you see such a sharp increase compared to the past, then there has to be a corresponding increase in the demand for labor as well. If a large part of it has gone there, then it is unlikely that it could have gone into other activities. But there is no evidence for other activities. There is evidence for the agricultural rural activities.
Mr. Vyas, two things slightly forward-looking. One is that we should be watching the next couple of months of data to understand whether this is a one-month spike led by the sowing season, as you were saying. Also, whether this translates into any improvement in terms of wage rates. I don't need you to tell. You don't need me to tell you that that's been one of the persistent problems for the last year or so. More than that.
Yes, you're right. We need to see the numbers in the coming few months to see how sustainable this increase of September really is. The impact on wages has to be studied completely independently. If this is a rush to sow in the month of September as the rains eventually came in, then it is likely that wages did rise because there was a rush to sow reasonably in time so that the harvest does actually take place. So I think you're right. In the coming couple of months, we should see how employment in rural India does progress. At the same time, it's important that employment in the urban areas increases as well.
A last word on that urban employment, sir. There have been fears that the real estate slowdown, given how large an employer that sector is, could have a bearing on the urban employment scenario as well. So while the improvement this time around has been on rural, there hasn't been any noticeable deterioration on urban employment?
Yes, there is no deterioration in the urban employment. There is a small pickup in urban employment as well. Like I said before, this is not statistically significant, so one can't actually say that there is really an increase in urban employment, but there is no deterioration, which is a very good thing to happen. The graduates in urban India, their numbers in terms of unemployed graduates is still rising. We require to ensure that quality jobs become available to them. So when you allude to the construction sector, I do not know whether you're a real estate sector, you're alluding to the construction sector, which is low-end jobs. I think it's very important that the higher-end jobs do increase in good numbers so that we give good quality jobs to the urban graduates as well.